What's up, everybody? Welcome to Clown World News. I'm super excited today because I'm talking about one of my favorite topics. You might have heard of it, you might not. If you haven't, ooh-wee, to be you. This is possibly one of the most underplayed conspiracy theory, but it's wholesome in the sense that it's not accusing anyone currently, directly, and it's not some hateful or it does have some almost cosmic horror elements, but it's not particularly, I don't know how to word it, but adrenochrome is that can put a toll on your conscious just hearing about it. But Mudflood is kind of just fun. It also vaguely relates to the ancient giant trees that used to be on Earth. I get excited just talking about it. All right, so first off, of course, take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Get your salt bags out, whatever you had left over from that Smash game when you just lost, and let's get in. All right, so let's cover it in a nutshell. We're just gonna watch a bunch of clips that I have prepared, and then I'm just gonna try to throw in my take on it. But I swear I love this. This shit is so dope. So let's see what Mudflood in a nutshell has to say.
Mudflood in a nutshell. Introduction. History is a set of lies agreed upon. Napoleon Bonaparte.
We gotta stop right there. Napoleon Bonaparte. History is a set of lies we all agree upon. History, his story. Now, regardless of if you think it's all a lie, it's all bullshit, it's definitely a poignant quote. Alright, let's keep going. I'm excited. I'm sorry.
Mudflood theory posits a worldwide mud flood in the early 19th century, and that it buried a previous civilization. We, according to this theory, have been given a false history in order to conceal this catastrophe. The theory suggests that it was both a catastrophe and an intentional conspiracy to cover it up. This mysterious topic has piqued the interest of people all over the world, and the evidence presented for it is quite compelling. This obviously raises many more questions than it answers. Mudflood research will have you asking questions you never would have asked before. It will challenge your assumptions about the reliability of historical narratives. Mudflood theory is not an all-encompassing explanation. It's an invitation to question everything you thought you knew about history.
So this theory is so awesome to me because you can take the information you learn and just apply it whenever you travel around, and you can just see things. You'll be like, oh shit, oh look at that, oh look at that, ah. All right, so I don't know if he explained it to your satisfaction. I'm gonna see if this right here is a great clip, an example. This video right here. So the premise is this: if you've ever been to a major city or even your small town, anywhere where there's a courthouse or something like that, you've probably seen there's a Chick-fil-A, there's a McDonald's, there's a Starbucks, there's your Walmart, and you know what those buildings look like. There's a school, it was built 50 years ago maybe. But then you'll notice some buildings that have architecture unlike any of the other buildings around it. And you'll notice something odd about a lot of these buildings. You'll notice that they just jut out of these slopes. The roads are on these crazy slopes. And one of the key signs, the symbol of when you see a mudflood building is,
in order to conceal, according to this theory,
is that you'll see these windows on the bottom level. You'll see windows half peeking up out of the ground. And it's somebody just pointed that out in a video I saw maybe a couple years ago, and I was just like, wait, what the fuck? Why would they build the building like that? What's the point? Why would they build the building and put a window and a doorway that's half out of the ground, and the window just stuck into the ground, and it just half the window is just looking at dirt? So if you actually look at a lot of these old photos right around the turn of the 20th century, you'll see a lot of people digging around these buildings. This is a great example. There's lots of dirt, lots and lots of dirt. So cities like Utah, San Francisco, Chicago, if you look at old maps, and we'll see a couple of these hopefully, that you'll actually see that on a lot of these old maps, these cities exist to this day. I mean, the cities that exist to this day are on these old maps. Like Chicago is called Shilaga back then, and on these supposed old maps, it actually has, you know, tall buildings, like modern looking buildings. And so the premise is sort of that they dug out a lot of these buildings, that these buildings were sort of ghost towns that got dug out. They didn't build these buildings recently. Whatever they say, like the date on like the construction of these buildings, we're contesting those dates. So sometime around the 19th century, which would be in the 1800s, right before cameras were like relevant, you know, kind of big deal, there was some sort of catastrophe. And what we've been handed to us, this idea of what time the timeline is, it's a fugazi, it's a fugazi, you know. It's sort of like the idea of vids or it didn't happen. Like, it's hard today. If something happens today and it's posted online, you have a video of it, it's so hard to even verify if that's real. So to think about something that happened in the 70s, that's hard. That's super hard to figure out. So imagine before, you know, like cameras and stuff existed. Imagine the bullshit artists that exist back then, that existed. There's stories and reports of people who sold the Eiffel Tower. Like, they just walked up to some like poor tourists and said like, "Oh, it's a beauty, isn't it? You know, it's for sale actually." "Oh, really? Is it?" "Yeah, I actually know the guy who's doing the real." And then they do a deal right there. They think that they're buying the Eiffel Tower, and some guy just takes their money. I'm just saying that to say that people were gullible back then. And it's not for lack of intelligence, it's just a lack of information. They didn't have access to information, so they just took everything as they were told, much like some other things we know that's going on in the world today. So hopefully we'll go into this more. We'll see some more buildings. The more you look at these old buildings and these old photos, the more you sort of like, oh wait, there's a recurring pattern. So what we're looking for in your brain today is pattern recognition. Let me make sure I'm getting the audio. Yeah, okay. We want pattern recognition. That's what you're going to be utilizing.
The former civilization enjoyed a high-tech lifestyle.
Oh, and the former civilization that we're talking about, it's called Great Tartaria, the Tartarian Empire, and they've been supposedly wiped off of maps. So you'll see a lot of this architecture. Ever notice why in like Washington, D.C., the architecture of a lot of these buildings, these prominent Capitol buildings, it's like Roman architecture, and it's all around the world. They have like a very similar architecture that just spreads out around the world. Like, what's up with that? You know, is it just that like when the founding fathers founded America, they were just like, hey, you know, I like Roman columns, and you know, I think we'll build some Roman columns, and we'll just put, you know, Abe Lincoln's face in there that people call it a day. We like the obelisk. Let's just build a fucking obelisk. Like, why did they do that? What's up with that? Why? All right, let's keep going. I'm sorry, I just get so geeked out on this topic.
With sophisticated construction methods not in use today, many cities around the world with notable instances of mud flood affected buildings tend to have corresponding historic fires or other natural disasters.
So like there's the Great Fire of Chicago. You know that one, right? It started all because some lady's cow kicked over a lantern, burned the whole city down. Because of a cow kicking over a lantern. I mean, if that was today, it would have to be the cow would have to be a police officer, and the lantern would have to be an unarmed black man, and then maybe I'd believe they burned the cities down. But even then, it was only the whole city. I don't know. No, that's a joke. I do not support racism or violence or anything like that. Let's get back to the mud flood.
These events, like all else, deserve a second look. This is followed up with the modern city being constructed literally atop the previous city's ruins.
So you can see in this one, there's these windows again. Why would they build it like that?
This is a consistent pattern across the world. To name a few of these apparent mudflood affected cities: Seattle, Boston, Oklahoma City, Syracuse, Washington, D.C., Moscow, Paris, and Cairo. These and others are known to have catacombs, abandoned subway tunnels, and veritable underground cities. Researchers and proponents of the mudflood event and subsequent deception surrounding the event place it around 200 years ago, but no firm or perfect reconstruction of our lost timeline has been agreed upon. Mudflood evidence, architecture. There appears to be evidence of hidden history in architecture. Evidence of mudflood is most apparent when one begins to look at the architecture and buildings in virtually any large population.
Yeah, just 1 second. I'm going to digress. I don't know why this guy is talking like he's a text-to-speech. Like, mudflood, or he's like an Obama impersonator. Mudflood, buildings, and the architecture are... Why are you talking like that, bro? Just talk normal.
Related cities. Just find buildings of a certain age that appear to have all or part of their original ground floor stories embedded below the ground. Indications of mudflood affected buildings are windows and partial windows visible at ground level. Oftentimes, these are bricked over. Such windows, when not covered over, are termed daylight windows, with the explanation that they are being used for bringing light into the basement. Such basements are usually only half buried below the ground and very often not uniformly, which reinforces an impression of a flow of material past a building or area.
All right, so just so we are here, we're on the same page. Does anybody contest the idea that if you dig into the ground underneath a lot of these cities, you'll find catacombs, you'll find tunnels, you'll find, stuff built underground, or, I mean, it was above ground at the time, but you'll find stuff that was built, man-made, if you dig down. Does anyone contest that? Think about Venice. Think about a lot of these places. Like, if you've probably seen the movie Italian Job, if you're old enough, maybe. The whole opening scene of that involves them using a submarine to get into a building through a doorway that's underwater. Why is half that city underwater? How did they build it? How do you build a building, under the water, and then on top of it you're just like, we're gonna build this entire basement, and then we're gonna furnish it, and then we're gonna build on top of it. We're just gonna live up there. We're just gonna close off the staircase. That's how we did it in Minecraft. That's how we're gonna do it.
Many wonder if the mud flood is the same as the biblical flood that cleansed the earth of all the wicked and spared God's chosen family.
Okay, so now that's a cool point, because
Flood myths are ubiquitous, appearing in stories.
What he's suggesting is that the timeline from the 1800s, that's when we started getting cameras and stuff, or the 1900s, we started getting cameras and things like that, video footage, and we have much more recorded history. Like, up until from the 1900s till about today, we can kind of get an idea of what was going on. Anything before that, contest the fuck out of it. That's contested history. Think about how fast, exponentially, our technology has ramped. Think about how quickly it happened. So we're assuming, like, the way the official story is that, like, technology was just flat. Oh, we got agriculture. And then thousands of years go by and keep going. We got to scroll. And then all of a sudden, like, industrial age, now we, like, boost up, and all of a sudden, within, like, the span of, like, 40, 50 years, we have a rapid technology increase. Just look in the last 20 years what technology has done. So the idea is that a lot of these older myths, we have this image in our head of what it looked like back then, of the time of the Bible and Jesus and all these people. And the idea is that, they were walking around in sand and dirt everywhere, and they had like old, like, Turkish looking sort of, castles in the sand. And it's like that shit from The Dark Knight Rises or whatever, where he gets put in that pit. It's just, we all think about architecture like that. Like, that's the walls of Jericho. But later on, we're going to see, maybe, just maybe, there's more to history. So there's also this idea of phantom history. This is kind of what got me started on Mudflood. It's the idea that, like, a lot of recorded history before, the 1900s was done by monks. And they would take old manuscripts and they would translate them into Latin or into other languages from whatever language they're in, Greek or whatnot. And so, like, some of these monks would supposedly, they'd find a report, and it's not like this is an exact science. I mean, just look at what we have today with exact science. There's already so much debate and contention. So to think that back then all of these monks in isolated places are going to all come to the same accurate conclusion about the timeline. So what we're suggesting is that a lot of these cataclysms, like the floods, that some of them could have been reported multiple times at different dates, but they're actually the same incident. They're just, there's like a phantom chunk of time in history where they say, like, from, you know, the early 1800s until, like, you know, the 1400s. In the Mudflood Theory and proponents of it, it's possible that this whole chunk of time didn't exist. It's not real, and that actually just take all the events here and just cram them up, and now we have a more accurate. So basically, you're not that far away from the time of the Bible, is part of the theory. We think about, like, Moses and like that story of Egypt. We think of that being ancient, like so long ago. But what if it wasn't? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if it wasn't? This is the gift that keeps on giving. The theory that keeps on giving you more theories to think about.
And legends everywhere. Several historical occurrences have been linked to a possible mudflood event, including the Tunguska airburst meteor and volcanic eruptions at Santorini.
So I think this is St. Petersburg, you can see. And if you look at old etchings of St. Petersburg, it's actually up to here. So the old etchings, before they had photographs, people would go out there and just, like, draw what they saw. And you can see some of them just up to here before they finally dug it out all the way down. And they actually didn't dig it all the way to the ground. But so notice a lot of these doors are huge. Big doors. Wonder why they had such big doors. Could it be? Could we have some big people? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Let's look.
In Pompeii. It is not clear whether these events are natural disasters of a random but cataclysmic nature or caused by a technology unknown to us today. Researchers have pointed out that St. Petersburg, Russia, ancient Greece, Rome, and Italy, the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and more are all said to have been rediscovered. It's worth noting that these places were physically unearthed by people of the times, immediately following the posited mudflood event.
Alright, so we're going to skip to another video. Put that one on the back burner. Now this is now my new favorite topic within this favorite topic, the World's Fair. What do you know about the World's Fair? What have you heard about it? So the official suggestion is that there was this thing called the World's Fair in the 1900s, and this is where they would have this event that would last for like 6 months, and they would have they'd have this huge area, this convention center, and people from all over the world would come, and they'd share technologies, they'd share ideas, and people would gather, and they would just, bam, just slap each other with some slim gym of knowledge. They'd snap into a cohesion. And this is where the World's Fair is, where things like neon lights, electricity, other things like that were demonstrated. Now, the official story about this World's Fair, which was in Chicago, is that this entire convention center was built for the World's Fair, specifically for the World's Fair, and then torn down afterwards. Now, you can probably tell from this picture what a feat that would be. Imagine. Now, I know that there was some wasteful spending back then, but just check out the sheer scope and size of this area. And think about, like, the most expensive movie around the 20th century would have been like Ben-Hur, and they like built these huge literally sets, these elaborate sets. Like Cleopatra had some elaborate sets. But they're suggesting to us, the official story is that they built these buildings impartial with like plaster and other tools to be able to do it really fast, and that they wouldn't actually stand up for too long, so after 6 months they tore it down. Convenient, right? Very convenient. So let's look a little bit about the World's Fair, because this is the architecture at these places is utterly breathtaking. You do not see architecture like this in today's world. You don't.
Guys, welcome to my channel. Columbian Exposition, also known as the Chicago World's Fair of 1893. So the World's Fair, held in 1893 to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the New World in 1492, allegedly. The centerpiece of the fair was the large water pool represented the long voyage Columbus took to the New World. Chicago had won the right to host the fair.
Look at this. Look at these buildings. Just really look at them.
Over several other cities, including New York, Washington, manufacturing and liberal arts building.
Look at this. Here's like a picture of the World's Fair. Look at the scope of it. It was huge. Huge grounds. And you're telling me that, well, you're not telling me, but they're telling us that they built all of this shit in a real short span of time, and then only used it for 6 months and then tore it all down. Why? What? I mean, you've probably, if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, you've probably seen the behind the scenes on the DVD extras where they built Rohan, and then they actually afterwards they came and tore it down, and I was like, oh, why? You should have just left Rohan up. It's because they didn't want people to squat there and other things like that. But the scale of Rohan compared to this would be the equivalent of literally building Minas Tirith. Like, let's just build Minas Tirith so we can film these scenes.
So this building in 1893 was actually the largest building in the world, and a massive feat considering it was only built in 18 months.
So they built these buildings in 18 months, the largest building in the world. One of these buildings was so big, you could fit the Pyramid of Giza, the Great Pyramid of Giza, inside of it. Inside of this building. And they did it in 18 months. It stood up for 6 months, they tore it down. What? Press an X to doubt? I press X to doubt so hard on so much of this official shit. But also remember the time, we're in like the 1800s. People they didn't have memes yet. They didn't think about pressing X to doubt. LA Noir didn't come out yet.
Put together with, so they say, wood, steel and a putty, sort of a mix of concrete and white plaster, turned into something they called staff, resembling marble once it's sprayed white. Not only to mention that to create this effect of marble in such a short space, obviously they say they couldn't harvest this sort of marble and resources, so they invented the spray paint machine, and this is where it all began. They painted this whole site, known as the White City, with white spray paint, and this was the first time spray paint was seen anywhere in the world.
So they literally say they invented spray paint so they could spray these buildings down to make them look like marble, because they weren't marble, apparently. Also, like, congratulations if you're interested already, if you're hooked, because Mudflood it's an emerging theory relatively. It's been around for a while. It only started recently, within the last couple of years, started to build steam. This is a mirror, but it's still, we're at less than 1,000 views on this. What the fuck?
Now, when the building was finished construction in October 1892, 100,000 people attended the opening ceremony. And the promoters actually said that they could fit 300,000 people with 6 square feet of elbow space, or around 1.5 meters social distancing in today's terms.
Look at this. This fucking thing. This Ferris wheel. We're gonna have a comparison to a modern day Ferris wheel, but I'll just let you know, it's pretty fucking big.
Which is just an incredible feat. That seems really wasteful, and something that we just would not do today. I mean, that's an unimaginable scale. We don't even know how they built the pyramids today, let alone to build a garage for it is just absurd. Seen here behind the
So he was talking about how we don't know how they built the pyramids, but we at this time in the 1800s they built a garage, a building big enough to fit the pyramid.
Statue of the Republic was peristyle. Such a truly magnificent structure.
Like at the very least, even if they did build this shit recently and they did do it with plaster and everything, at the very, very least, the smallest kernel of truth you can grab from Mudflood would be, why don't we make buildings like this anymore? This sure is a shame. We'll get into that in a sec.
Definitely would not look out of place in Rome, in the Vatican City. Wagon, and they say symbolizing explorers. Okay, they say so. Like a city on its own, yet just an expo, complete with mudflooders from every state, in my opinion. So they say that it was utilized to show off major resources of each state. The promotion of resources at the fair was intended to create new channels of trade and display goods to new potential markets. And we'll go over a few. Seen here, the Wisconsin building, looking just like a mud floater. Move on to the Texas building. Different, but the same, in my opinion. Clearly the arches and the spires all showing. So moving on here, we have the Pennsylvania, looking very Tartarian, in my opinion. Clearly an old mud floater.
So my theory, and this is just a side theory, my theory is that this place was not built for the World's Fair. It actually existed a part of a pre-history civilization that was worldwide and actually had some sort of worldwide union, and that this place was sort of like the United Nations in a way, and that each one of these emissaries would build, or each one of these nations areas would build their own little embassy, and then they'd all meet here. And then perhaps when they did a global reset, or whatever happened, they decided to use this place as sort of like a trade boost for economies and whatnot, and then tear it all down because they didn't want to have it revealed.
Ornate and intricate. This is the main building. And it's all liars, and these state buildings, even though...
Look at them, bro. Look at them and tell me you could build that in 18 months. With today's technology, tell me you can build something that ornate. Like, really consider how ornate a lot of these buildings are. The decorations alone, I don't think you could build in 18 months.
No, not for a second do I believe that story. In my opinion, it's all lies. And these buildings were here prior to these promoters taking advantage of this site. Okay, so moving on to the amusement park portion of the World's Fair. Seen here the famous Ferris wheel of the Chicago World's Fair 1893. And to put in perspective, here we see a Ferris wheel in the same city in 1995. So on the left...
Look at this. This is at the Navy Pier, 1995. I was born in 90, so I might have even ridden this thing when I was a little kid. At the Navy Pier. Look at this thing. Look at the size of the compartments. What the fuck?
1893, 100 years before, about these buildings, and we have an excuse for all of them. Coming to the end here of my presentation, thanks for sticking around if you're still here. If you've liked what you've seen. This thing not white like the rest of this white city. It was painted, they say, red and blue and purple, like all different colors, with a golden arch and golden door there in the center.
Again, look at how ornate this shit is.
And just a truly grand structure. Now this was the work of Louis Sullivan, and has all the bells and whistles of architectural training, traveling to Europe and get through Paris with all the architects there, of course, and has to drop past Paris when they're dropping buildings like that constantly. And the reason I say constantly is, let's just have a look at a period in this gentleman's life around the same time as the 1893 World's Fair. Now, I'm not an architect, and I don't know how many jobs an architect would take on at a time, but looking at the transportation building, that seems like a lot of work, and that was around 1891. Now, let's have a look at what he was doing at the same time. The Prudential building in 1891, that was finished in 1894. Here we have the Charlotte Dixon Wainwright tomb, which was from 89 to 1892. So that took him 3 years from 89.
This took him 3 years to build, this fucking dump. And then this thing he built in 18 months? And you can't even really tell the sheer scope of this thing. 18 months. And then this, 3 years. What? The other building we were measuring in baby ages. We're measuring this in toddler years. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a long time it took you to build this.
Which was from 89 to 1892. So that took him 3 years, and it's just a tomb. We go on, we've got the Guarantee building, 1894, again, started in 1891. James Charley House, finished in 1892.
I say you get the gist of it with these buildings. Yeah, there's just no way that this entire complex, that this whole area was built in 18 months. And then here's the griffins, and the griffin is one of the symbols of the Tartarian Empire. So this alone should be enough. But there's more. Of course, there's more. So here we're going to get into some theories about like what kind of technology these people used, and then what might have happened to them. So from the half of the 1900s, the gray men would send their agents to exterminate Tartarians in New India, North America, take their land and minerals and slaughter them and their livestock to feed the newly created industries of Chicago, and transport the meat on the roads which would pave the way for the takeover of new territories and create distances that would encourage the oil industry, the use of the automobile, and the need for currency expansion and creation of a financial system. But this is another story. So now if you like string pulling theories, big can of worms, here's your can of worms. I hope you got some hooks, because we're going fishing. This shit right here, bro, this shit right here, dog, consider that if there was once a global superpower, and it was a peaceful somewhat superpower to a degree, and you wanted to overthrow that, and some sort of event happened where you had the opportunity to, you got rid of all of them, you then created a new industry in Chicago, and you took over these lands. You started to spread out territories. You started to spread out colonies and create this new history. Like, have you ever heard that joke about, like, what if you took, like, 12 midget babies and put them on an island, and then you're the only tall person, and you raise them to think you're God? You know what I'm saying? Like, what about that? You know, what about taking an entire orphanage or an entire civilization? If all the men died in a war, what do you do with the children left over? Well, you could tell them anything you want. And that's our great-great-grandparents. Oh, sorry, this one has some epic music. I'll just mute that for a second. But we're going to look at some of these ideas of like their technology. The copper has been mined since the beginning of human history. Phoenicians. Yeah, you can find a lot of history, just like in architecture. It's hiding in etymology, the history and study of words. So, like, you think about, like, Monday, Sunday, Monday is moon day. Money, moon, it says the same root, the monosyllable. A monster is a moon star. You know, trickstar. Like, if you take all the days, I don't know if you knew this about the days of the week, they're all just like pagan days. So it's Tuesday is Tyr's Day, Wednesday is Odin's Day, Woden's Day, Thursday is Thor's Day, Friday is Freya's Day, Saturday is Saturn Day, and Sunday, yeah. So it's almost as if a Saturn worshipping cult took over the world. I don't know. But so with the mud flood, we're basically contesting the idea of linear technology growth. And so in these previous civilizations, the Tartarian Empire, they had alternative technologies that allowed for them to have a modern lifestyle. And some of these technologies Tesla understood, and they're basically just like using energy conductors. So we're going to look at a lot of old buildings all over the world, and we're going to connect some dots. According to American Indian oral tradition, copper was mined by red-haired, white-skinned marine men who came from across the sea. And they needed mercury too. In the past, alchemists developed sophisticated, powerful techniques to separate and purify metals. Alchemist, Alchem, from the land of Chem, the Black Lands, from Egypt, supposedly. And alchemy is the basis of all chemistry, by the way. Coils can be seen at the top of the power supply centers in India. Manufactured history and the invented religions call these energy factories as temples. But let's look at them. Let's just think about some of these things. Look at some of these buildings and how ridiculous they are. So look at these buildings in Myanmar and Burma. Notice this one? Looks kind of similar, almost like a Tesla coil. Look at some of these things. Look at this. Is this all just for some weird religion? Or does this serve another purpose? So this is in India. This is in India, different places. They're calling these power stations. It's the theory. We actually have modern versions of these types of technologies. But look at look at what's on top. Tell me that that's not some sort of technology, or that's really just an ornate UFO looking thing. So if you put together all the pieces of some of these ruins and complete the design, this is what it looked like. Tell me this doesn't look like a microchip or a superconductor of some kind, a semiconductor. Like, this is definitely set up in a specific pattern. Now, I've heard people on Ancient Aliens say some shit like, well, you see, some scientists speculate that these were put in a specific distance apart to tell you about the distance from the sun and the moon to these other planets and these other planetaries. Exactly this many cubits, this many. Yeah, but like, it's also like, it looks a lot like some technology. Graham Hancock has some ideas. He's kind of interesting, but this is some crazy idea that actually like resonates because it deals with shit you already know. You've probably seen something look like this if you've ever taken apart a computer. So, whoops. So here is a building in Taipei. They have the damper for the lightning rod at the top. It's a power conductor. A tuned mass damper. This is modern. So it's like there's a precedent, or I guess what do you call it? The opposite of a precedent for this technology. It's like we have a descent, I don't know, post descent, I don't know, a soft descent, but we have a thing now that is basically the same technology as what they had then, except the shit they had back then just was way bigger and looked way cooler. The metal spheres represent the favorite geometric object of the fictional character Tesla. Fictional character? Oh, shit. No way. No cap. See, because I've read Nikola Tesla's autobiography, and I found it fascinating. Fascinating. And if we're going to look into some things, I have a video on Donald Trump and the connection between Plus Ultra. I'm just connecting this dot right now, but Donald Trump's uncle actually was the guy who went into Tesla's apartment after he died to grab all of his stuff and go over it, all of his technology left over, and to see if there's anything, of a national security threat. So we got some connections of the pseudo inventor. See, whenever you get into theories like this, you're gonna have a lot of theories that bubble up within it. They might not all be true. Maybe Nikola Tesla was a real guy. His photo sure kind of looks like Adam Lanza, so maybe it's Photoshop. I don't know, but a lot of these theories that you got to take it all with a grain of salt and just kind of look at the bigger scope of what this idea is suggesting to you. The dark eminences that created the Tesla myth, as well as a long list of many others, see themselves as very intelligent and with a great sense of humor, and they appreciate leaving some clues to their frauds in the most unforeseen places. Maybe. It's like the idea of like, why does Bowser leave a lot of doors and keys to his castle? Doesn't seem like a very good castle. It's like he wants to be caught. Alright, so if you look at some of this shit, you can see very similar sort of ideas. Why do they? You always see these dome structures with these like rods at the top. And then you'll see, this is in Turkey, Istanbul. This is in Washington, D.C. It's very similar. We also have an obelisk in Washington, D.C. There's an obelisk in Cairo. What's up with that? You know, you ever put those dots together and just been like, what? There's also an obelisk and in similar architecture in the Vatican. It's worldwide. There's obviously something going on of some proportion. It is possible that one of the reasons for the World Trade Center's demolition in 9/11 was the need to expand energy extraction technology. Oh shit! Now we're getting this shit. Now I'm about to be fucking censored. I don't know what they're about to talk about. I'm organically clicking. YouTube, do not blame me. But maybe Bush did 9/11. But maybe they used a direct energy weapon to dustify. What? Why? Why was there so many thermite Cheetos everywhere? Why did everything in these cars melt except for the glass? Whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to move on from that because we're not talking about that at the moment. We're talking about Tartaria and the Mudflood. And I'm just clicking. Is there anything else in here to click? Alright, cool. We'll move on to the next one. Oh, look at that. It's the same one. Alright, so here we have this cool... Remember I was talking about Jericho? The Wall of Jericho and these Bible myths? So listen to what this guy has to say. It's pretty fascinating.
Wasteland out here where nothing grows, maybe some brush. Always the same kind of thing. But then you have this very strange picture. I mean, not really strange, but... This is what who would conceive of this as the fall of Jericho? I'll just put it in a medieval backdrop with a Tesla tower up here and like some castles, and I mean, I don't even know what to make of that, but this completely changes my opinion.
He's talking about the Wall of Jericho story from the Bible, and he's talking about some artists from antiquity have depicted it like this. Now, when you think about the walls of Jericho, you think about... I don't know what you think about, but I think about... Let me see if he brings it up.
Or at least opens the door to what else might be going on. I mean, look, these are just regular old castles from, you know, the knights in shining armor days or the Renaissance period. And this is like, when you read Fomenko, this is what he keeps talking about. He keeps talking about all these Renaissance pictures. Eusebius and, you know, all these old... supposed great thinkers from antiquity are basically medieval figures, always being portrayed, or often in medieval garb. And I mean, this couldn't be any more medieval. And then I found another picture. It was hard for me to find pictures that I could date. This guy, Joseph von Bredel from Finland, when he lived, and he painted this. Unfortunately, I can't get a larger picture, but notice the trees and the vegetation and this plush, you know, green, beautiful backdrop. And this is what his rendition is. This is back in like 1700.
Of the walls of Jericho in the 1700s. So we're talking about... this is what I would depict the walls of Jericho were. Something more like this in the Middle East, you know, with deserts and, you know, this kind of architecture. But we have people in antiquity dating it into like medieval times. Could a lot of these myths have been co-opted and you know, skewed? And at the very end of this, I'm gonna try to wrap it up in like a grand sort of theory that might make some sort of semblance of sense. But let me check. All right, we're at 40 minutes, so I got to do this before we get to the hour mark. All right, so here's some maps of Tartaria. Let's look some ancient maps.
How did they live, and why is this knowledge being kept from us? Now, I'm sure by now many of you have seen the CIA document talking about this exact subject, the erasing of Tartaria in history, and not actually done by the CIA, but the CIA simply having commentary on the subject in a memo that I believe was now declassified, and many question the authenticity of this document, but nonetheless, very interesting. And what about the reset? Does the reset really matter? And what is the reset? The reset is an idea that we have clues of past and much more magnificent civilizations than our own existing as little as 200 to 400 years ago, based on the...
Shit, my alarm's going off. Fuck. Lamau. Sorry. We're trying to dig deep into ancient history.
architecture and layouts of our cities and forts, which in past times were called bastion forts.
This is a star fort, by the way. You'll see these like everywhere. Ellis Island in Florida, there's lots of places that have this sort of star fort. It occurs all over the world.
And what we call star forts, existing all throughout this realm. Things that we can't replicate today, and really not being hidden at all, just given ridiculous stories on how they were created, and in modern times being repurposed for many different things. One being the pedestal for our Statue of Liberty.
Alright, let's try to move on here. So here's during the 2010-2011 Canterbury Earthquakes, over 400,000 tons of silt came to the surface, covering streets and gardens in several suburbs. So this can happen. Like mud using earthquakes, which maybe there was a weather or direct energy weapon that could cause earthquakes. It shakes, and the things just get buried and the dirt comes up. Could also be rain. But now, why don't they build buildings like that anymore? Check this out.
Architecture is favored by postmoderns and communists as a weapon against the people.
This is called brutalism, the modern style of these buildings that you're looking at right now.
The purpose of its construction is to foster alienation and atomization, and it really works. It works really well. It's very effective. This architecture is an expression of open hatred against humanity, and classical European architecture, whose purpose was to elevate the soul, is the primary victim of it. A key argument against building something beautiful is that it's simply too expensive. That's the thing. It's just, we can't do this. It's too much money. It's too expensive. Well, imagine how much that cost. But the thing is that beauty pays for itself in countless ways, including financial. The endless, hideous third world strip malls of Canada are on nobody's must-see bucket list.
That is a good point. Good point. These buildings that you see, like malls, strip malls, or whatever, they exist for one reason and one reason only. To make money as efficiently as possible for one person. The guy who owns the business. The guy who owns the land. Who rents out the real estate. It's just so he can make money and extract it from you.
Considering how we now have modern materials and construction methods, even 3D scanning and printing of industrial materials, there's no excuse to not choose the beautiful option.
Yeah, we'll just end his part right there because that's a great point. Keep that in mind. Keep that close to heart.
So yeah, I mean, strangely, I feel as if there must be keepers of some sort, and really we can't look to science for this. I think the best chance we have to understand who again may control this realm besides going as high as a higher power, I mean like the highest of high, but something that, you know, would have to control waters, for example, and mud, and make decisions on why to reset civilizations, and really just maybe the mud is actually just to cover up the bodies. I don't know. When we look in the 1800s, the early 1800s photos, more specifically 1850s, give or take 10 years, but we see the vacancy of people in the streets and mud. Could this be a mass burial in order to reintroduce a new wave of people? And what is this? Could this be some kind of experiment? And, you know, I feel blessed to actually be even talking about this, and others making videos on this subject, and even be part of this conversation, because this is the real conversation. It's not, you know, yeah, we live in a paradigm where we have to run around and make money and have jobs one way or another, but that's not what's really going on. And if you're listening to this video, then you are not just about that. You are about knowing the truth, and it's really the greatest thing worth pursuing, I think. Where are we really? I mean, we know what's a lie. We know the lies we've been fed. It seems that that's clear now. It seems that that's all we've had is a lie. And what a great idea on their part, you know, feed us a lie at an early age and give us an occupation to preoccupy us, and let the experiment go on. But once again, I feel blessed to be able to speak about this. And
so if you look at some of these buildings that he was pointing at earlier, especially the White House construction photos, the idea is that when you see some of these construction photos, it kind of looks like they're renovating more than constructing. This is in Washington D.C. You see the building behind it already existing, and they're just like kind of doing something to the top or adding an ornament here or there. I gotta check my time. All right, got like 8 minutes. Okay, do we have time to get into these? Dude, it just goes on, man. There's so much. That's why this is such a fascinating topic, because you can go to your hometown, go find your courthouse in your downtown area, and just look. As you're driving around, just look. You will see some buildings that just stick out like a sore thumb, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Look at this picture. Look at all this dirt right here. They're supposedly constructing this in this photo, but it looks more like renovation. It looks more like they found this in somewhat of a ruin, because look, why would they dig it under all this dirt? Why would they build it like that? It doesn't make sense. It simply doesn't make sense. Alright, let's look at some ancient trees real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. Alright, some guy's playing hanging drums. We're going to let him play. So the idea with these are that ancient trees, giant trees. Look at that. That's an ancient tree trunk is the idea. Now that could just be a mountain or some weird rock, but it's a petrified ancient tree. Massive. Like Meru or whatever maybe was one of its name. Yggdrasil. I don't know. There's probably lots of different names for all these types of trees. But look at some of this shit. Like Ayers Rock. Some of these things are just so weird looking. Giant palm trees potentially. Just look at the way the rocks formed. Why did they form like that? Imagine the scope of a tree this fucking big. And then imagine the thing that cut this tree down. What the fuck? Look at this leaf. Potentially a leaf. Oh, we don't just have giant trees. We got giant animals. We even got giant faces. What? People that big fell over, just decide to get turned into the earth and get petrified? This could just be pareidolia, you know, some seeing faces and things. But what about these giant shoes? Holy fuck, we even got giant turtles. Alright, so we got some trees. I think these are supposedly not trees, but like, look at what regular trees look like. Big trees that we know. They're huge. Big old trees. What are these things? What's that? Look at, that's an actual tree. Look at this turtle. What the fuck is this thing? Is this an old statue that just fell over? The fuck is this? Alright, I only got 4 minutes, so I'm gonna try to wrap it up real quick. Alright, so here's my theory. So I'm gonna try to end this before it gets to an hour, because I don't know how long YouTube can make a video. Maybe if you guys like this, you can go to the comments and you can say I like this, make another one, and we'll do more. We'll talk about it more and different theories about what it could be. Also, if you appreciate this type of content, you can check out my description. You can find different ways to support it. But let's get to the case. Also, I gotta say, call your mom before this ends. I don't want to forget. So call your mom. Be a good person. Stay vigilant. Okay, now let's get to the theory that we got going on. Ragnarok, the apocalypse, the revelations, all these things, all these stories, the flood of Noah, all these great myths. I'm sure that in the Eastern cultures they have their own, and Native Americans, I'm sure they have their own, South American, African, they probably all have these sort of ideas. So there at one point was a global society, potentially called the Great Tartarian Empire, and they potentially had some sort of system where people could live and exist and work, you know, not to just for money, for a job, for some bullshit, so for somebody else to make money upstairs, but so that they could, you know, thrive as a human being, you know, spread art, expression, and culture. And then some seed, some sort of snake thing, maybe it's the Vatican. If you look at the Vatican, all of their symbolism is super satanic. It's baffling why it looks like a snake building, all that shit. Maybe it's like their tongue-in-cheek humor about like they fed us this lie about all this organized religion and all this shit, which it could be real. I don't know. I'm just throwing the theory out there. I'm not saying that God isn't real or Jesus isn't the savior or anything like that. I'm just throwing some theories out. Potentially our history, the Council of Nicaea and other things like this have been completely fabricated, potentially. So some sort of society overthrew that society, and the society that overthrew that society wanted to have a different system where they extracted all the wealth out of all the people and enslaved humanity, just like the ancient Sumerian stories of Enki and Enlil. And supposedly, you know, maybe Enlil was the one. I think he was the one who liked humans and wanted to help them. So he wanted it to be good. So it was a Great Tartaria. So if you actually look at one of the Sumerian, one of the cuneiform seals from the Second Great Pyramid War, the Second Pyramid War, maybe you can find this, but the seal of it, the celebration seal of it, was an eagle holding arrows above a pyramid. And if you look at our dollar bill, if you look at it, it has that symbol on it. And if you go back far enough and look at older dollar bills, they didn't used to have that symbol on it. So, oh man, there used to be giants on the earth. I'm running out of time, but they could have been giants. And there was the great anime epic battle, and there was like Gundams looking thingies maybe, and there's directed energy weapons and harps real, and there's elites, and they're vampires, and they're using our adrenochrome to suck everybody's blood out, but they're trying to stay young forever because I don't know, maybe there's giants in Antarctica and they're gonna unfreeze the giants. The giants got frozen, and maybe when they unfreeze the giant will come out and fuck some shit up like Cthulhu, or he'll do some other shit. I'm running out of time, but if you want to see more, put a comment in the description, and we'll talk more about this. But I am absolutely out of time, so take care, everybody. Call your mom. Be a good person. Stay vigilant. Mudflood. Woo. Peace.